Lynn, and I am studying to become a BCBA. In today's video, we're just going to jump into the first unit of my class, which is BEH 5041 in our current semester in FIT, and that is Introduction or Intro to Behavior Analysis. So let's just jump right in and see what the first chapter is all about. The first unit is discussing what is behavior analysis in general, and it explains that behavior analysis is a natural science. It records what's measurable and observable, and it goes into how it is the study of functional relations between behavior and the environment, and also the technical application of what we research. So there's a few scientific terms that start out the overall chapter because they want you to really drive the idea home that it is a natural science. It is something that is to be studied, measured, and it's not necessarily a social science or psychoanalysis. It really is its own field, and it is actually a school of thought within psychology. So the first term that we learn in our unit is parsimony, which is also known as Occam's razor. That is that the simplest explanation usually is the best explanation, in this case for behavior, because we are studying behaviorism. The second term that we learn is philosophical doubt, also known as skepticism, which is that all knowledge that we have in the field is tentative. We have to be open to new explanations, new interpretations, or new data that comes out. Our field is actually relatively young. Some of the terms that we're using have been only released since I think the 80s is when they were first published, which that was barely 30 years ago. So this field is constantly changing and growing, and because of that, we need to have a lot of skepticism within the data within our field because it is ever changing. The third term that we learn is determinism, which states that the universe is a lawful place and all events that happen within the universe is due to a system of rules. Because of that, science is basically there to determine those rules so that we can predict things in the future. Behavior in behaviorism is only performed by living creatures. So for instance, if you're an organization, if it's a hurricane, those don't have behaviors that we can study, so to speak. Yes, people may say like, oh, this organization donated something, or this tornado turned left. Yes, those are actions, but those are not considered behaviors within behaviorism. They can only be performed by a living organism. So a puppy, your neighbor, yourself, those are all things that can behave and that can be measured and studied. So now that we've determined what or who can make behaviors or perform behaviors, how do we define a behavior or figure out if behaviors are happening? The first thing that we have is called the dead man's test, which basically means if a dead man can do it, it is not a behavior. The second one that we have is the specific actions test, which basically means identify the verb in the sentence when you're describing something happening and see if that is the behavior. Both tests are utilized to determine if a behavior is happening. For instance, if you say Frank is lying down on the ground, is that a behavior? Well, Frank is lying down, great, but he's not doing anything beyond lying down. Can a dead man lay on the ground? Yes. So is that a behavior? No, because a dead man can do it. However, if you say Frank laid his head on a pillow, a dead man can't actually do that because it requires movement of your head to lay it on a pillow or find a pillow for it. So the laying part, that would also be the specific actions ID, is also part of that. So both tests can be used in conjunction with one another to determine if a behavior is happening. Next are a series of terms. The first term is response. A response is a single instance of behavior. Now, this is within the world of behaviorism. Obviously, response, according to the dictionary, is something else, and it is something completely different to everyday terms. But in behaviorism, a response is a single instance of behavior. Be that as it may, the next terms, are private behaviors and public behaviors. Public behaviors are observable by others, and private behaviors are only observable by the organism experiencing or performing those behaviors. For instance, if you are bit by a mosquito, that is a public behavior. Mosquito biting your skin, right? That is a public behavior because it's observable by others, or I should say a public event. Sorry, it's a public event because other people can see the mosquito land on your skin and bite you. However, the itching sensation that you feel is a private event. You are sensing something happening within your body. So that's private, that's only experienced by the organism who was bit by the mosquito. The next two terms are topography and dimensions of behavior. Topography is the physical nature of the response. Did I say cookie? Did I write cookie? Did I sign cookie? Those are all different topographies of a response. Beyond that, dimensions of behavior are any measurable parts of behavior. So for instance, we have the rate of behavior, which is how many times a behavior happens within a period of time. And there's duration of a behavior or a response, realistically, which is the time between the beginning and the end of a response. So if someone yells like, ah, that duration is what's measured. And also, how many times did they yell in a given amount of time? Both are time related, obviously, but there's multiple more dimensions, but those are the two that were introduced in this particular unit. We also define the environment. The environment is the stimulus or conditions of which the behavior occurs, because behavior never occurs in a vacuum. The environment will affect an organism through their receptors, so you see something, you smell something, you feel something, you hear something, and the organism will respond to it, generally speaking. So an environment is any context that a stimuli happens and affects an organism. The end of the unit is ended with a quote from Skinner that is really interesting, I think, or at least kind of summarizes the entirety of the class, and that is, behavior is a difficult subject matter, not because it is inaccessible, but because it is extremely complex. Given its complexity, it's broken down into 9 units in just the introduction of behavior analysis. So we'll go further into depth in the other units, but that is my overall summary of Unit 1. I'll see you in the next video.